All right, piss and vinegar day 80, I think. Chest and triceps. I'm officially getting too strong for my dumbbells, which is cool, but also not so cool because it's going to cost me a lot of money. I'm up to the max capacity on these adjustable dumbbells, which is 40 kilos or 95 pounds. Um, so it's going to be time to get some more expensive dumbbells because in a week or two, these will be too light. They're already feeling pretty light. So yeah, unfortunately, dumbbells of the 42, 45, 47, 50 kilo variant are very expensive. Just for a pair, you're looking at hundreds of dollars. So that's not great, but that's all good. It's a good problem to have. It's a first world problem. It's a strong person problem. Uh, but yeah, I'm going to have to start buying some new dumbbells. Or maybe I'll get some ones where I can put weight plates on them. But realistically, I'd rather just have set plate dumbbells. So I might just buy them as I progress. So when I get past 40 kilos, I might just buy a pair of 42s, and then once 42s are too light, I'll buy 45s. And at this rate, that's going to be pretty quick because my strength is going up massively as I bulk up. So um, yeah. What else? Oh, today I was supposed to do a 1 rep max bench press, but I forgot to do that. But I did this instead. So this is the top set. These are the whole dumbbells maxed out. I feel like I probably could have got more weights here, but these dumbbells, the knurling are super, super rough in your hands. That shit is like, it's worse than sandpaper. And when you have two 40-kilo dumbbells that have like all these little fucking dots that are poking into my baby soft skin hands, it hurts really bad. So I couldn't focus as much on the set as I could focus on the unbearable pain in my hands. And when I ended up doing a drop set, I ended up putting a jumper on so that I could put something over my hands. But again, that's a lack of focus. If you see one of my previous videos where I talk about focusing more during my sets, I need to start focusing more. And one thing today would have simply been having enough focus to think, all right, before I do the really heavy max out set with the 40s, maybe I should put something over my hands in order to make the most of that weight rather than limiting it by the pain in my hands. So no one to fault but myself. Just poor focus once again. But it was hurting so much, and I'm such a fucking pussy that I put my jumper on so that I could have something over my hands, even on the 25 kilo weight. So I drop set here down 15 kilos. And this is essentially just a back off set because I rested longer than you're supposed to rest on a drop set. Drop sets need to be about 10 to 15 seconds max rest. That was a solid 30, 40 seconds rest. That's too long. So that essentially counts as like a rest pause drop set or a back off set. But either way, it was fine. I took this set to failure 2, and then I move on. And there's a few other things I did differently today. But yeah, I didn't do the 1 rep max bench press. I was hoping to do the 1 rep bench press this week just to see where it was at. But next week I'll do the 1 rep max bench press and then keep progressing on the dumbbell presses and try it out again months and months from now when I finish my bulk. Today I decided to do the dips directly after the incline press rather than pre-fatiguing with the for the pec flies. And one is ego. The ego gets the best of me. I want to be able to lift as much weight as I possibly can on the dips. And these dips are already shit. I really need to buy a dip bar because these bars rotate and it makes it really unstable. The weight goes onto one arm far more than the other half the time. So it's not the worst, but it's not great. I could probably do a fair few more dips if I hadn't had this rocking rack for one and the instability of these bars essentially. So yeah, I spent like 6 hours the other day trying to create a dip bar that was easily accessible from my gym, but it just didn't work out. Nothing was working. It kept fucking breaking, or if it didn't break, it was unstable, or it wouldn't break on my body weight, but it break the stronger I get once I start adding plates to this. So yeah, for now this will do, but it is a bit annoying. And I don't like, the other alternative is ring dips, but I don't really like ring dips much. There's so much instability. I feel like it's harder to feel in the pecs. I'd much rather, and like some reps are harder than others due to the instability, so I much rather the straight bar dips instead. And I could potentially do a 1 rep max on this and see what it is, and I should probably do that instead of the bench press, seeing as I don't do bench presses at all, but I do a bunch of dips. So it'd make more sense to see where this is at. But I'm kind of hesitant to do that because of my shoulder instability, how unstable these bars are, how much the rack moves, and just the nature of the dip. I just don't really want to do a 1 rep max on. I don't want to potentially risk it. So I'm going to do a bench press. And yeah, and then the next movement, I'll explain why I'm doing it in this order now, apart from ego, but I'm doing the other cable fly, the cable pec fly that I do after this for a specific reason, other than just the fact that it pre-fatigues my dip and makes me weaker. But yes, I'm doing this now because this is a very heavy contracting movement. I'm really contracting the pecs. There's not a bunch of a stretch just because the way I've built this machine is a lot of friction on it, so the stretch isn't that great, but the contraction is immense. And the idea here is to get a crazy contraction, so get a movement that really contracts hard, and then follow it up with a movement that gets a really big stretch. So I don't know how to explain it, and this is really bro sciencey, but the idea is to really get a really tight pec, really just contracting the pecs, and then the opposite stimulation almost immediately afterwards in a pec fly with the dumbbells to get the huge stretch. So kind of stretch out that contraction I created. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's very bro sciencey. It's kind of esoteric, but the way it worked kind of felt pretty good. There are certain things in training where you can't really explain them. There's no exercise science behind them, but because they just intrinsically work, you just do them. So not everything has to be quantifiable. Not everything has to be absolutely provable. There are certain things, and that's part of how the science catches up to the bro science, right? So what I just explained was bro science, but somewhere down the line, let's say there's some validity to what I was just saying about, doing a contraction movement followed by this stretch movement. You might find that, say 20 years from now, science creates an article showing that there's actually something to doing a heavy contraction movement before doing a heavy stretch movement. For example, nucleus overload, the training methodology of training a muscle every single day with high frequency and low volume. For years, that was just pure bro science. There was no real science behind it. People understood that if you train a muscle on a high frequency basis, that it could get way bigger than it had you not trained it really frequently. And there were bro science guys who would just say that it worked, and then there was kind of like pseudoscience guys like Megan from 3D Alpha, who would kind of give you the pseudoscience of it, or like his idea of what the science was from the perspective of a guy who wasn't a scientist but intelligent enough to understand the biomechanics or the biochemical processes of the human body, and say, oh, okay, well, when you train, you increase nuclei and satellite cell density. Thus, the more frequently you train, the more frequently you can make those satellite cells, and thus it makes sense to do a very low weight, high frequency, high volume program like nucleus overload to increase the nuclei artificially. Then 5 years later, after he comes up with this bro science, pseudoscience idea, the science starts to actually back it up. Maybe a scientist saw his video, maybe they didn't, but either way, somewhere along the lines, or somewhere along time, science catches up to the bro science. So, yeah, basically the moral of the story here is, just because what you are doing isn't proven by science doesn't mean that it's not going to work. There's plenty of things right now, and just even into the 21st century, that science is not caught up to. So just because Dr. Mike Israetel didn't fucking have a citation to tell you about whatever exercise thing you're doing, or I'm losing track of thought here. Like, you got these like super fucking science nerd like Dr. Mike Israetel's, and who's another one? I'm trying to think of another super sciencey. Jeff Nippard's another good one, where they don't try anything new. They just kind of go by the science textbooks, and I'm a huge fan of that too. I mean, I'm a high intensity guy. High intensity is very much predicated on the idea of just really staunchly staying by the principles of exercise science and logic, which is what science is. Science is logic, but sometimes you have to be slightly illogical and creative and be more liberal-minded and kind of try new things to figure out what might work for you, because everyone's different too. So anyway, that's just kind of food for thought. If you want to experiment with something, experiment with it. I mean, training doesn't always have to be this fucking black and white boring thing, doing what everyone else is telling you to do. There are certain principles that work 100%. Like there's certain yes or no truths, like the idea that if you, okay, like the basic one is you need to create muscular damage in the muscles through training in order to then make adaptations. Like if you don't train, you won't get big. So that's a basic, very simple idea, and that's just a straight up truth. There's no way around that. If you don't give the muscle a weight stimulus or a stimulus and a requirement to grow, it won't grow. Or another one is you need a certain baseline of protein in order to recover the muscle tissues from breakdown. Those things, they're great, and you need to understand those fundamentals. But there are other more vague things that you can kind of experiment with. So I'm really fucking rambling on here with not a whole lot of rhyme or reason. That's kind of what I do in these videos. I just spitball and see what I throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, right? So, yeah, if you have an urge or a want to experiment, and it can, creativity is important. Like one of the biggest issues in my own training or just life is just not being creative enough, just being so repetitive and so kind of black and white and never doing new things, or just eating the same foods and doing everything basically the same every single day, which is great. Routine is required, but it can be pretty stale, it can be pretty boring, and you'll never find cool little things that might improve your training life, etc. So anyway, that's kind of the topic or rant for today, is be willing to try new things while still adhering to the base principles that are the most important. Doing some posing. Triceps are looking pretty meaty. I could actually pose my triceps today without cramping like a motherfucker, so maybe I didn't train them hard enough, or maybe they're just getting better at posing post-training, because normally I do tricep extensions and shit, and then I go to pose and I can't even fucking flex my triceps because it's just so damn painful and they start to cramp. But I was able to do that today, which might mean that I didn't train them hard enough, I don't know. And then I'm doing some nucleus overload for my traps, so back to that previous topic of nucleus overload that Megan from 3D Alpha kind of first coined. It's I'm doing that currently in my training. If you're not aware of that yet, I'm doing traps every day, and I'm doing right arm pronation, which is an arm wrestling specific movement, every single day, but mainly focusing on trying to get the traps bigger by increasing the nuclei, by training the traps every single day. And if you're trying to do nucleus overload in your own training, it has to be something that's really easy to adhere to, because remembering to do a muscle every single day can be difficult. There has been a few days, admittedly, where I forgot to do the traps and I'll just skip it, or I'll be like in bed at 10 a.m. and I'm like, fuck, I didn't do my traps, and I'm not going to get out of bed, go up to my shed in the freezing cold and do traps then. So trying to remember to do it. I've got like signs on my gym that say traps every day to remind me to do it. You could have an alarm to do it, but another way to make it easy to train a muscle every day, in the case of the traps here, this machine I've set up, I've got the weight plates there all the time. Those plates are always there. This 80 kilo stack is there the whole time. That's way it's there and ready to go, rather than having to set up a bunch of shit in order to do the traps. I can just finish my workout, walk over to this contraption, and just start banging out shrugs. Whereas if I had to, say, load up a barbell, which is previously how I was doing this, I have to get the bar, put it on the rack, put plates on there, and I mean, that might sound brutally lazy, and I am brutally lazy, and for some that might not be an issue, but for me and a lot of people, that could be the difference between doing it and not doing it. So if you want to try doing nucleus overload, for sure give it a go. Try it on some more obtuse muscles like traps, forearms, calves, rear delts, etc. Probably don't want to do it on your pecs or shoulders, these pressing muscles that get a lot of work already, or biceps. So anyway, yeah. See you guys tomorrow for more Piss and Vinegar. Bye-bye.